The email appeared while I was presenting to our biggest client. Elise, your services are no longer required at Horizon Tech. Ryan will be taking over your responsibilities effective Monday. Your personal items will be packed and sent to you. No need to return to the office. Severance details to follow. My hands didn't shake as I continued my presentation. My voice didn't waver as I answered questions about the software I'd developed. The only sign that my business partner of 10 years had just fired me via email was a slight tightening around my eyes. I waited until the clients left, their contract renewal signed and sealed, before typing my response. Check your contracts, Name is Elise Chen, and at 39, I just received the most callous dismissal in corporate history. But while Richard was probably gloating in his corner office, imagining me in tears over his betrayal, I was calmly downloading backup files from my secure cloud storage. The signs had been there for months. The closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to, Ryan's increasing presence at executive functions, the way my development team was gradually reassigned to other projects. 3 months ago, I'd overheard Richard telling someone on the phone, "She's brilliant with code, but she doesn't have the vision for leadership." That same evening, I'd contacted a lawyer specializing in intellectual property. A week later, when Richard suggested streamlining our company's operating agreement to simplify things, I'd agreed cheerfully while securing my patents and establishing ownership of the code I'd written. My phone buzzed again. Don't take this personally. Ryan has connections we need, and frankly, your ideas have gotten stale. The board agrees it's time for fresh blood. Ryan, Richard's 26-year-old nephew. I'd met him at last year's holiday party, watched him talk over female employees, noticed how he took credit for others' ideas when he thought no one was paying attention. He was young enough to be Richard's son, inexperienced enough to think he was special. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I called my lawyer, the one I'd consulted 3 months ago when I'd found my name removed from key project documents. "It's time," I said simply. "He just made his move." "The cease and desist letters are ready," she replied. "I'll send them first thing Monday morning. Do you want to give him a warning first?" "No rush. Let him think he's won first." Another email from Richard. "I know this must be difficult for you. You're not getting any younger after all. At least you have your coding to keep you busy. My coding, the proprietary algorithms that powered Horizon Tech's most successful products, the ones whose licensing agreements I'd carefully modified after noticing Richard's changed behavior. The ones that, according to our updated contracts, remained my intellectual property with limited-time licensing to Horizon Tech, renewable at my discretion every 6 months. I smiled, thinking of the registered letters that would arrive at Horizon Tech on Monday morning. Let him enjoy his moment of triumph. I spent that evening in my apartment, organizing the paperwork my lawyer would need. Among the files, I found photos from Horizon's early days. Richard and me, 5 years before we launched our startup. He looked so different then, before his success had turned him into a caricature of his former self. These days he wore custom suits that couldn't quite hide his expanding waistline, tried too hard to connect with the 20-somethings at tech conferences, used industry jargon that sounded ridiculous coming from a man of 58. My phone kept buzzing with texts from him, each more condescending than the last. "I've been planning this transition for months. Ryan understands the market in ways you never could. You'll be fine. Maybe you can teach coding at a community college." Already told the board. They agree we're moving in a different direction. Screenshotted each message, adding them to my evidence folder. Let him dig his hole deeper. My lawyer would love his casual admission of premeditation, his gleeful announcement about replacing me with an unqualified relative. The last text caught my attention. "BTW, your access to company servers has been revoked. Consider it a favor so you won't be tempted to sabotage anything." Perfect. I called my best friend and lead developer, Aisha. "Hey, did Richard announce my departure yet?" "What?" "No. What's happening?" Her concern was immediate. "I've been fired. Ryan's taking over Monday." That entitled man-child? You're joking. Her outrage warmed me. Not joking. But don't worry. Remember Project Phoenix? A pause, then her laugh. Oh my God, you actually prepared for this? For 6 months. How quickly can you back up your work? Already on it. Half the dev team will walk when they hear this. Tell them to wait. Monday will be interesting. My phone buzzed again. Don't worry about your stock options. We'll work out a fair payment for your shares. My shares. The 30% stake in Horizon Tech that Richard had always treated as a token gesture rather than genuine ownership. The shares whose shareholder agreement I'd had my lawyer review line by line. The agreement that specifically prohibited removal of a founding member without unanimous board approval, not just majority approval. I poured a glass of wine, the good stuff I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. Tomorrow, Richard would learn some hard truths about intellectual property law and shareholder agreements. But tonight, I'd enjoy the quiet and plan my next chapter. Morning brought a flurry of increasingly angry texts from Richard. What the hell did you do? Clients are calling about license expirations. The development team is threatening to walk out. The board is asking questions I can't answer. Answer me. I silenced my phone and headed to my home office. Saturday was usually my day for creative thinking, and I had a new company to design. Life goes on, even when your business partner pushes you out of the company you built together. Around noon, his wife called. Elise, dear. Richard told us everything about how difficult you've been, how you've resisted the company's new direction. He says you're being vindictive now, causing problems with clients and the development team. I put her on speaker while I sketched a logo design for my new venture. Did he mention firing me via email and installing his inexperienced nephew in my place? Or maybe revoking my server access without warning? Silence then. Well, he said you left him no choice, that you'd been resistant to innovation lately. Margaret, I have his texts. Would you like me to read them to you? The one where he mocked my age? Or maybe the one where he suggested I teach at a community college? Another pause. He did seem a bit harsh. I told him that email was inappropriate. I appreciate the call, Margaret. I've always liked you, but I think it's best if we end this conversation now. My lawyer has advised minimal contact during the proceedings. Proceedings? Already? Goodbye, Elise. By late afternoon, Aisha was spreading news through industry channels. Apparently, Richard had called an emergency weekend board meeting that wasn't going well. The board members, actual tech investors, not family friends, were asking pointed questions about intellectual property ownership and the legal basis for my termination. My lawyer called with an update. The emergency hearing is scheduled for Wednesday. Given his admission in writing about replacing you with his nephew without proper procedure, we're in a strong position to challenge the termination. Has he tried to access any of your proprietary code yet? Not yet, but he'll try soon. When the clients start calling about functionality issues, he'll panic. Speaking of which, his nephew's social media is providing excellent evidence. He's been posting about his big promotion all day, including some choice comments about moving past outdated leadership. I smiled, thinking of my own documentation, a year's worth of meeting exclusions, project reassignments, and text messages that proved premeditation. Richard had been so focused on his grand transition that he'd never considered I might be watching, waiting, preparing. My phone buzzed with another text. You think you're so smart, but I have copies of all your code. Nothing you created belongs exclusively to you. I forwarded the text to my lawyer, adding it to the growing file of Richard's mistakes. Let him learn the hard way about properly documented intellectual property ownership. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. The emergency board meeting on Wednesday was everything I could have hoped for. Richard showed up looking haggard, his usual polished appearance diminished by 4 days of mounting crisis. Ryan waited outside, his youth painfully obvious among the seasoned board members and lawyers. My lawyer presented our evidence methodically. Richard's dismissive email, his documented history of excluding me from decisions, the intellectual property agreements that clearly showed my ownership of key technologies, the shareholder agreement that made my termination illegal without unanimous consent. Mr. Davis, the board chair addressed Richard directly, you unilaterally terminated a founding partner without board approval, in direct violation of our shareholder agreement. And now we discover the core technology is actually licensed from Ms. Chen personally? Richard shifted uncomfortably. I was just trying to move the company forward. By replacing our CTO with your nephew who has 2 years of coding experience? The chair raised an eyebrow. And now you're claiming rights to proprietary code that documentation shows is clearly Ms. Chen's intellectual property? The code was developed during company time, Richard's lawyer tried. Ms. Chen maintained strict separation of intellectual property rights throughout her tenure, my lawyer interrupted. We have documentation of every line of code developed, its ownership status, and the licensing agreement signed by Mr. Davis himself. I watched Richard's face as reality started sinking in. He thought this would be easy. Push me out, install his nephew, perhaps claim ownership of my work. He'd never bothered to understand my insistence on clear contracts and ownership agreements, had mocked my careful documentation as paranoid. The board finds sufficient evidence of improper termination, the chair announced. Ms. Chen's position is reinstated immediately, pending further review of company leadership structure. Additionally, all licensed technology will remain in use under the existing agreements. But Ryan is already announced as the new CTO, Richard protested. We've told everyone. Then I suggest you find a different position for your nephew. The chair cut him off. And Mr. Davis, the board takes a very dim view of nepotism and improper termination procedures. Outside the meeting room, I heard Ryan asking Richard about his promised office. His response was lost in the sound of my heels clicking confidently across the marble floor, heading back to the company he'd never respected or understood. The next few weeks brought a string of increasingly desperate moves from Richard. He tried claiming the intellectual property rights had been transferred to the company. He remembered verbal agreements we'd supposedly made. He even suggested he'd been the real creative force behind our products, claims quickly disproven by my meticulous records and the testimony of the development team. He's getting desperate, my lawyer observed. His nephew's social media shows. He's still telling everyone he's the new CTO, but he's working from home now. Apparently, the developers refused to report to him. Richard's family started reaching out, their tone markedly different from their initial accusations. We had no idea, his sister admitted. He told us you were holding the company back, that you needed to be pushed out for progress. But then we saw his messages, the way he treated you after 10 years of partnership. That's not the brother I thought I knew. Margaret called again, this time in tears. The things he said about your age, about replacing you with someone younger. I raised him better than that. I thought I did anyway. I let their calls go to voicemail. Their support might have meant something weeks ago, but now it felt like rats deserting a sinking ship. The company thrived under renewed leadership, ironically boosted by industry gossip about the situation. Clients who'd been wavering signed new contracts, often specifically requesting my involvement. My boss tried something similar. One client confided while reviewing our latest software release. Thought he'd push me out after my maternity leave. Men like that never expect us to be smarter than them. My phone still buzzed occasionally with texts from Richard, his tone swinging between anger and manipulation. You've ruined everything. I never meant to hurt you. You'll regret being so stubborn. Can't we work something out? This company would be nothing without my connections. I forwarded each message to my lawyer without responding. Let him dig his hole deeper. Through the grapevine, I heard Ryan was having second thoughts. Apparently, being a figurehead CTO with no actual authority or respect wasn't the glamorous promotion he'd imagined. The age gap that had seemed unimportant during family dinners felt different in the harsh light of a professional environment when seasoned developers refused to take Him seriously. He'd posted about toxic workplace culture and learning valuable lessons yesterday. My lawyer mentioned during an update call, and he removed CTO at Horizon Tech from his profile this morning. I almost felt sorry for Richard. Almost. But then I remembered "Your services are no longer required after 10 years of partnership." The casual cruelty of his comments about my age. The way he'd assumed I'd be helpless without him. Instead of pity, I felt something else. Pride. Pride in my foresight, in my quiet strength, in my ability to protect myself while he underestimated me. The final board meeting painted a very different picture from Richard's imagined triumph. Gone was his cocky attitude, replaced by barely concealed panic. Ryan was noticeably absent. He'd taken a junior developer position at a gaming company, according to industry gossip. Richard had shown up in his oldest suit, his usual sartorial splendor apparently abandoned as the company's stock took hits from his mismanagement. His lawyer looked tired, probably from trying to find loopholes in my documented ownership of key technologies. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," Richard attempted one last time. "Despite recent tensions, my vision for this company—" "Your vision," I interrupted, like these email threads taking credit for projects led by my team, or these quarterly reports where my department's innovations are attributed to executive leadership. The chair had clearly seen enough. The final decision reflected my careful planning. I would remain CTO with expanded authority, while Richard's role would be limited to managing existing client relationships. He would no longer have hiring power or the ability to make unilateral decisions. "You've destroyed me," he hissed as we left the boardroom. "I'll be a figurehead in my own company." "No, Richard. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't destroy me too." The board chair was waiting outside, ready to announce the new company structure. The irony of Richard's situation wasn't lost on anyone. The man who'd mocked my outdated ideas now held a ceremonial role while I led the company's technical strategy. "You planned this all along," he accused. "You knew this would happen." "No, I just paid attention. And unlike you, I understood the value of good documentation." The chair stepped between us. "That's enough, Richard. You've embarrassed yourself enough already." As they walked away, I heard her start in on him. "Honestly, what were you thinking? Firing a founding partner by email? Installing your nephew with no experience?" I watched them disappear down the hallway, feeling nothing but relief. Richard had thought he was writing the ending to our partnership with that cruel email. Instead, he'd merely set my carefully laid plans in motion. My phone buzzed, not with texts from Richard this time, but with notifications of new client inquiries. Life was moving forward, just not in the direction he'd imagined. 6 months after the attempted ousting, Horizon Tech had expanded into 2 new markets. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Richard struggled to maintain his diminished role, the outdated ideas he'd dismissed were thriving. I'd hired 5 new developers and launched a revolutionary security protocol that was gaining traction nationally. News of Richard's situation trickled through industry channels. He'd tried networking events but found that his reputation now preceded him. Younger executives, having heard about his history through tech gossip, kept their distance. Ryan had apparently warned his friends, sharing screenshots of his uncle's promises and subsequent abandonment when things went south. Richard's business relationships suffered too. The board had limited his client interaction after several complaints about his increasingly bitter attitude. The speaking engagements he'd once enjoyed were offered to other executives, those who didn't have a history of trying to improperly terminate founding partners. He tried to claim age discrimination. "He's telling everyone they're pushing him aside because of his age," Aisha told me during our weekly strategy meeting. The board just added that complaint to his growing file. I was surprised when Margaret appeared at my office door one day, but her presence spoke volumes about how thoroughly Richard had alienated his own family. "I know we didn't support you at first," she admitted, settling into the chair across from my desk. He played the victim so well. But watching how he handled everything, how he acted afterward, I'm ashamed we ever believed him. My lawyer kept me updated on Richard's continued attempts to challenge the board's decisions. Each petition was denied, his claims of unfair treatment dismissed based on the evidence of his own actions. He actually tried arguing that his email was just poorly worded, not an actual termination, she told me, laughing. The board asked if your services are no longer required, had some alternate meaning we weren't aware of. Horizon's success brought unexpected validation. Tech magazines wanted to feature my story, not as a pushed-aside partner, but as a savvy businesswoman who'd protected her interests. Young developers asked for advice about securing their intellectual property rights. The best protection is preparation, I told one young woman who reminded me of myself a decade ago. And always, trust your instincts, Margaret called occasionally, usually after Richard had done something particularly self-destructive. He'd tried launching a competing startup, hoping to prove he was the real visionary behind our success. He'd gotten involved with cryptocurrency, investments that promised fast returns. Each attempt to recover his former prestige just dug him deeper into professional isolation. I don't know where he went wrong, she sighed during one call. His father and I offered to help him rebuild his reputation if he'd just take responsibility for his actions, but he's still blaming everyone else. You, Ryan, the board, the tech culture. I listened politely, but maintained my distance. Their family drama wasn't my problem anymore. My life had moved forward, filled with plans for a new AI division and a possible expansion into healthcare applications. The only reminder of Richard's impact on my life was a framed screenshot hanging in my office. His final email before I blocked his number. Have fun with your coding. At least it'll keep you busy while the real visionaries move forward. Below it sat my latest innovation award. Proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding on your own terms. 1 year after the attempted ousting, I hosted a launch event for Horizon's groundbreaking new platform. The event attracted tech media, and the story they wanted to tell wasn't about the failed power play. It was about a visionary CTO expanding her company's reach. Richard's betrayal had become a mere footnote in my success story. During the event, Ryan unexpectedly appeared. He looked younger than ever. Or maybe I just felt that much stronger. He shifted uncomfortably, clutching his conference badge like a shield. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. I believed everything he told me about how you were resistant to change, how you were holding the company back. Then I watched him try the same manipulation tactics on other people when things got tough. I continued reviewing code on my tablet. Those weren't innovations, Ryan. They were shortcuts. There's a difference. I know that now. He paused, then added. He tried to blame me when the board restricted his role. Thought I could be his scapegoat. After 2 weeks of him telling everyone I'd misunderstood his instructions and overstepped my authority, I understood what you meant about the difference between innovation and shortcuts. I actually laughed at that. Let me guess. He had big plans but no understanding of the technical requirements? Exactly. Everything was going to work out once his vision was implemented, once he got that control back, once his new ideas definitely proved successful. He shook his head. I'm at a startup now. We have tight deadlines and a small team, but at least we're building something real. After he left, my lead developer whispered, Was that the nephew? No, I replied. That was just another person who learned the same lesson I did. Speaking of lessons, I gestured to a group of young coders examining our new platform. Let's talk about your idea for expanding our security protocols. The company had become more than just a business. It was a symbol of resilience, of the power of preparation, of what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. Margaret called one last time, not to discuss Richard, but to thank me. You taught our family an important lesson, she said, about enabling bad behavior, about making excuses for cruelty. Richard's still blaming everyone else for his problems, but we're not defending him anymore. That's your legacy to our family, showing us the difference between supporting someone and enabling them. I thought about that legacy as I reviewed plans for our newest division. Richard had intended to diminish me, to replace me with a younger, more controllable version, and take credit for everything I'd built. Instead, he'd inadvertently pushed me to become even stronger, more successful. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Richard filed another petition to be reinstated to full executive powers. Board dismissed it immediately and ordered him to pay legal costs. Thought you'd enjoy that. I smiled, thinking of him in his diminished office role, still trying to rewrite an ending that had been determined the moment he underestimated me. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. 2 years after Richard's cruel email, I received an invitation to speak at a Women in Tech conference. The topic wasn't betrayal or corporate politics. It was about building and protecting your intellectual property in the technology sector. My story had evolved from cautionary tale to inspiration. During the Q&A session, a woman asked about keeping code ownership separate from company employment. My business partner says I'm being paranoid. That partnership means sharing everything. My former partner said the same thing. I replied, right up until he tried to claim ownership of my code. After firing me, trust your instincts. Protection isn't paranoia. Horizon Tech had grown to include international offices, each more successful than the last. The coding skills Richard had mocked now powered systems used by millions of people and had been featured in several technology journals. Through mutual connections, I heard Richard had finally left the company, unable to tolerate his ceremonial role. He'd tried launching a consulting firm, but his reputation made clients hesitant. His speaking profile still listed him as visionary tech pioneer, though his achievements were clearly outdated. Ryan, ironically, had become one of our contracted developers. He'd earned respect through hard work and innovation, not family connections. "You inspired me," he told me once, showing how a developer can build something lasting instead of falling for empty promises. I kept Richard's cruel email framed in my office, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of how far I'd come. Below it hung a sign that read, "Documentation beats speculation every time." At the 5-year anniversary celebration of my continued leadership at Horizon, I stood addressing our employees and industry partners. The company had transformed from a promising startup into an industry leader shaping the future of technology. Margaret attended, though I hadn't sent her an invitation. She waited until the crowd thinned to approach me. "I saw Richard yesterday," she said, smoothing her dress. He was talking about his glory days, about the empire he could have built. He still doesn't understand that he didn't lose control of the company in that board meeting. He threw it away the moment he decided you were disposable. I thought about that email, his casual cruelty, his assumption that I would crumble without company access, how he'd expected me to disappear quietly and prove him right about my dispensability. Instead, I'd built something stronger than before. Each new innovation was a testament to what people could achieve when they stopped dimming their light for insecure colleagues. The young developer I'd hired last month, coincidentally also named Ryan, came over with a question about the new protocol I'd designed. As I explained the process, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the office window. I saw what Richard had failed to see 5 years ago. Not a woman getting older, but one getting wiser, stronger, more innovative. His cruel email had meant to be an ending. Instead, it had been a beginning, not just for me, but for every developer who heard my story and realized that preparation isn't paranoia, it's power.